Hey everyone, it's Mystery Girl with Missy, and I'm Missy. Welcome back. I want to thank all of my subscribers for all of your support. Thank you so much. It truly means so much to me. And I would also like to thank all of my new followers and subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, everyone, so you don't miss any of this series. And if you're new, hit that subscribe button. I do have up my fair use disclaimer for the photos that I've used in this video, and along with the rest of the videos, I do want to put out my trigger warning. The following video contains material that may be traumatizing for some audiences. This video is intended for audiences 18 and over. This video contains extremely sensitive information and images. If there are children in the room, please have them leave the room. This video may be traumatizing to some. Guys, this video is a little bit more intense than the other one. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any part of this series or the series that is attached to it. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get into it. I want to say welcome to Willowbrook State School, the scandals and the controversy behind it. This is part 3, the scandals and abuse. Again, if there are any children in the room, please have them leave now. By 1965, Willowbrook housed over 6,000 intellectually disabled people, despite having a maximum capacity of 4,000. That's 2,000 more. Senator Robert F. Kennedy, accompanied by a television crew, toured the institution in 1965 and proclaimed that individuals in the overcrowded facility were living in filth and dirt, their clothing in rags, in rooms less comfortable and cheerful than the cages in which we put animals in a zoo, end quote from Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Senator Kennedy offered a series of recommendations for improving the conditions. I'm going to play that video for you right now. Please remember this video clip is old. I apologize for the sound quality. And I do have up my fair use disclaimer for the use of this video.
State institutions for the mentally retarded, and I think that particularly at Willowbrook that we have a situation that borders on a snake pit, and that the children live in filth, that many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because of lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower. There's very little future for the children or for those who are in these institutions. Both need tremendous overhauling. I'm not saying that those who are the attendants there or the ones that run the institution are at fault. I think all of us are at fault. And I think it's just it's long overdue that something be done about it.
The state of New York responded by developing a 5-year improvement plan. However, after making minor adjustments, conditions at the institution quickly reverted to the inhumane conditions that had thrust into public consciousness. In that same year, Senator Robert Kennedy addressed a joint session of the New York legislature on the dehumanizing conditions of the Rome and Willowbrook institutions in New York. Kennedy said that residents of these institutions were being denied equal access to education and deprived of their civil liberties. Although the hepatitis study had been discontinued, the residential school's reputation was that of a warehouse for New York City's mentally disabled people, many of whom were presumably abandoned there by families, foster care agencies, or other systems designed to care for them. So before we continue, I just want to put it out there again, another trigger warning. The information and the photos that are about to come up are very disturbing. If you can't watch the rest of this video, I totally understand. Don't feel bad. Believe me, I understand. It was very hard for me to even make this video. So we're going to continue. An estimated 12,000 residents died at Willowbrook from 1950 to 1980. That's approximately 400 a year. Willowbrook was overcrowded, underfunded, and understaffed. Children and adults were left to die. Many who came to Willowbrook lived a short, brutal existence. They died because of neglect. They were unclothed, starved, some only clothed in underwear, unattended, with very little encouragement from staff. Beyond overcrowded, fewer than 20% of the children actually attended any educational classes, received very little, if any, mental stimulation. One attendant for 50 residents. So one attendant had to look over 50 medically frail children. That's just insane. Insane. 50 to 1. Residents were also lying on the floor, smeared with their own feces. The buildings were filthy, and the smell was absolutely horrific. Parents weren't allowed to visit inside the facilities apart from the official room where they could visit. So parents were only designated one room to visit their child and were not allowed in the actual facility. So they had no clue what was going on behind those doors. It's so disturbing. So disturbing. The residents that did have clothes, the clothes were like rags. They were confining residents for indefinite periods of time. They were failing to release residents eligible for release. Why would you not release a resident that was there for release if they were eligible for it? Geez, I wonder if it was money. When it comes down to it, it's always about money. You know, they said they didn't have enough money to fund the school. They didn't have enough money to do this. They didn't have enough money to do that. But they kept people there that weren't supposed to be there so they could keep collecting. It's always about money. There was also so much violence at Willowbrook. The residents there were injected with hepatitis. They were raped, beatings, psychological torture, overuse of powerful drugs, and even murder. Rape and beatings were committed by both staff and residents on residents without staff intervening. That is just sickening. You see this going on and you don't step in to stop it? I mean, did nobody there have a caring heart at all? Did everybody just go to work to neglect these children? I mean, again, like I just said, it's all about money. It was a paycheck. And, you know, forget what I gotta do. I mean, you got one employee to 50 residents. I mean, that's too much for anybody to handle, even if it was half. Even if it was half. I mean, we had 7 medically frail children at the house that I worked at. And not only did we have 4 or 5 CNA, type staff there, we had at least 1 or 2 nurses and an RN. We had an RN that lived right upstairs. God forbid anything, that we could just call her and she was down there in no time, whether she was on the clock or not. If one of our residents had to go to the hospital, one of us were there with them the whole entire time. And if they were admitted, we were going and visiting them on our days off because we cared so much about them. I just can't fathom the mindset that was going on there. I mean, it's just so sickening. And when I watched this, when I first started working in this business, it just made me so nauseous. And continuing to watch the videos, it was just so heartbreaking. And that's why it's taken me so long to get together and even begin making these videos, because it's personal in a way, because I cared for the children that I worked with so much. And I can't imagine anybody in that industry taking on a job like that requires so much love and responsibility, and then allowing all of this and the neglect and everything. I mean, beyond that, they were also kept in cages. I mean, come on. This is just ridiculous how mean and cruel they were to them. They were literally kept in cages. I was able to find an article on it. Unfortunately, every copy of the article that I found was blurry, but I did want to show you there is an article on it. Besides the neglect and the violence, there was also a lack of nutrition. They were served rotten food, and they were being fed so fast that it was causing aspiration. Aspiration can cause somebody to die. Aspiration, the food gets lodged and you can't breathe, and it forms fluid, and it can cause somebody to die. I mean, come on. So besides the neglect and the violence and the lack of nutrition, there was also medical mismanagement or experimentation. Not all doctors and nurses and staff were uncaring. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I'm sure for some it had to be hard to see what was going on. But honestly, if it was me, I wouldn't be able to go back to work without reporting the place. There would be no way. So, I'm sure that there were some there, and I know that some did very good things, but some did really horrible things. Some doctors failed to do their medical duty, just in general, just failed to do it. Some residents simply disappeared or even committed suicide. I mean, how does a young child disappear and nobody notice? How does somebody commit suicide and they just, okay, go on about their day? It's sickening. And there were satanic rituals that were rumored to be held in the tunnels below Willowbrook. That is kind of what led me to lead on to read into this. I wanted to see what that was about. Was it staff? Was it, what was it? Who was doing these rituals, in the tunnels where they're transporting residents? And that's how I stumbled across the next part of this series. So you definitely want to make sure you stay tuned for that. But, I mean, everything that was going on there was sickening. Some of the residents that were sent to Willowbrook by their parents, they were encouraged to do so by their doctors. They were told to relinquish their disabled child for the sake of the family, not knowing what was actually going on behind the closed doors. Any parent who fought to protect their child was labeled as a troublemaker by the administration, then subject to threats and manipulation to make sure they didn't rock the boat. All I know is that if I had a child there and I found out that any of this, excuse my language, if I found out that any of this shit was going on there, they wouldn't have had to worry about rocking my boat, because I would have went down there and it would have been a total nightmare. They would not want to see me coming, because you send your child to a hospital that is, or they label it as school, so because they're medically frail, where they need assistance, G-tube, J-tube, diaper changing, even if they're teenagers or adults need to wear diapers, have breathing issues. You're told by your doctor they're going to be better off, they'll have a better life if they're in a facility where they can have 24-hour around-the-clock care, somebody that's always looking after them. If they need oxygen, they got oxygen. If they need medication, they got medication. If they need G-tube, they got G-tube. If they have a trach, they can be treated. You put your child there thinking you're doing the best thing for them, only to find out that when you go to visit them, you're not even allowed in the building area because they don't want you to see what's going on behind closed doors. And first of all, that would never be allowed. I want to see the room where my child is. I want to meet the staff that is working with my child. I want to know everything about that place where my child is 24/7. They wouldn't have had to worry about rocking my boat to keep my mouth shut because my child would have been gone and out. The other thing about the staff there, some of the employees bought and sold everything from drugs to jewelry and even meat at a public site and completely closed off the 375-acre Willowbrook area, became an underground city with its own hierarchy and society. There was violence, drugs, disease, theft, and alcohol used to name some of the crimes that were going on at Willowbrook, not mentioning the neglect, the violence, the beatings, and everything in between. I know this video has been really hard to watch and listen to, and there's another story that I do need to bring up. So we're going to get into that right now. One of the most well-known untimely passings was that of 12-year-old Renee Meckler. On June 21st, 1965, she slipped through the arm of a chair, causing the restraining device, which is like a seatbelt or a harness that was holding her to the seat. It caused it to work up her body and around her neck and ultimately strangled her. She was found passed away at 3:30 p.m. by an attendant, Charlene Elam, on the patio of the building, which was in the back of the building. Renee needed the belt because she couldn't hold herself up, so they put the belt on her, but the belt was not allowed in the facility. So it was meant to hold her up, as she couldn't hold herself up to do because she had epileptic seizures. The device was not allowed, however. Her death occurred because she was not watched or checked on. Her death was overlooked and overshadowed by other deaths that had occurred, whether before or after her untimely passing. I was able to obtain the newspaper article on this from the Staten Island Advance. I'm sorry if I stumble over my words while reading this. It's dated Wednesday, June 23rd, 1965. Blame safety strap in death of child. The death of 12-year-old Renee Meckler at Willowbrook State School resulted from the improper use of a safety device, Dr. Hammond, director, revealed yesterday. Administrative action against 2 employees responsible for the care of the severely retarded and physically handicapped girl is being considered. Again, I hate that word. District Attorney John M. Braist said that evidence in connection with the child's death will be presented to the grand jury currently considering operations at Willowbrook. I'm sorry, I couldn't see it. The child was strapped in for safety, but it was not done the proper way, Hammond said. The youngster, daughter of Miss Ethel Meckler of the Bronx, was strangled Monday when the device used to keep her from falling from the chair became entwined, I couldn't see it properly, about her neck when she slipped through a wooden arm of the chair. Certainly there was no intent to harm the child, the administrator said, but an improper device was used to keep her from sliding out of the chair. The kind of device is not permitted and our employees learn that in their training course. We have special safety tests and special harnesses that should have been used. The makeshift arrangement is not allowed for just such a reason that an accident could happen, Hammond said. Or noted, it says noted. Dr. Hammond expressed his regret to the child's family. He also voiced confidence in the vast majority of his staff, but at the same time stated his determination to prevent lapses from occurring. The child, who was also epileptic, had to be strapped into the chair to be prevented from falling out, it was explained. Deaths of 2 residents of the home in recent months from scalding showers have prompted a grand jury investigation into their circumstances. In addition to presenting the case to the grand jury, Brace said that he has asked for a complete police report and will conduct his own investigation into the circumstances. Brace said that the timetable for the grand jury inquiry calls for completing the probe of the first 2 deaths before the jury, which has been held over to December 13th, considering the latest incident. Brace disclosed that in conjunction with the probe of the 2 scaldings, he has hired a Staten Island engineering consultant, John Carlisle, to look into the matter of the plumbing at the institution. Carlisle is already conducting tests of the system. Well, if the staff was doing the showers properly, they would put their hand under the water and feel the temperature of the water. I mean, that doesn't take much. This is just so sickening that this was allowed, and they were even called out, and it was still allowed to continue. A lot of you will know who this is. This is Geraldo Rivera. A lot of you may be too young to know who this is. I'm going to do a whole video on this report, but this is Geraldo Rivera. In 1972, ABC News investigative reporter Geraldo Rivera again drew national attention to Willowbrook with a television expose that was watched by millions. Willowbrook, The Last Disgrace, exposed the institution's serious overcrowding, dehumanizing practices, dangerous conditions, and regular abuse of residents. The public was again outraged. However, this time, the outrage served to spur parent advocacy, can't say the word right, sorry again, groups to take action in a federal court. So in the next video, we are going to get into that Geraldo Rivera interview, and I'm going to try to get it posted for you. The next article is called The Lost Souls. Families ache for information about relatives who vanished at the notorious institution. This is by Stephanie Slepian. Florence Viola McKee died at the Willowbrook State School in 1972. She was 67. Gerald Barth arrived there 2 years later. He was just 7. Miss McKee's granddaughter is looking for a place to grieve the grandmother she knows nothing about. Gerald's cousin is convinced he may still be alive, somewhere, somehow. It's been more than 3 decades since former advance reporter Jane Curtin and then unknown Geraldo Rivera took the plight of the residents of Willowbrook public. But the families still ache to know what happened to those who went and never came out, or to those who were transferred to other institutions without a trace. In many cases, it has been left to siblings or grandchildren and cousins, many bearing the words Willowbrook State School for the very first time, to search for pieces of their family. That says families they never knew were missing. The first stop is usually the internet. They type in those 3 words. They can't comprehend what they discover. They start calling agencies under the jurisdiction of the State Office of Mental Retardation and Development. Sometimes they were told records have been lost. It is believed many of our stories in OMRDD property in Willowbrook, where patients once lived. Invariably, confidential rules are cited, rules that didn't even exist when the state school was around. No information on former patients can be given out. They are told, including where they were treated, how they died, where they were. I want to learn everything I can about her, get every record out there, Lynn Yake says about her grandmother, who died in 1972 at Willowbrook State School. Shown in the photo at the top, I feel like her life mattered. It's not right that she should have to suffer when she did for so long and to be discounted. I wasn't able to find that whole entire news article, but I did want to share it because I wanted to put out there that even when Willowbrook was shut down, which I'm giving away some information here, but yes, it was shut down, families still didn't know where their family members were. And like I said, when I started my job working with the medically frail, we did have some Willowbrook residents that were residents in other houses within our company. And they were the sweetest, but I mean, if you walked up behind them and they didn't know, they jumped. That fear stayed in them forever. Guys, I'm going to end this here. I know this has been a rough one to watch. I really want to thank you for sticking with me and for your support. And just, remember, every day is a mystery. Nobody knows what's going on with anybody else or their families. And just be kind to somebody that may be having a rough day. And I'll see you on the next video.